The International Monetary Fund has slightly marked down its 2026 World Economic Growth Outlook to 3.1% after reflecting impacts brought on by the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran.
국제통화기금 IMF가 미국, 이스라엘과 이란의 전쟁 영향을 반영해 올해 세계 경제 성장률 전망치를 종전보다 0.2%포인트 낮은 3.1%로 소폭 하향 조정했습니다. It's no surprise that we're not expected to see as much economic growth as, say, if this Middle East war, didn't happen. But what do we know?
Yeah, so the latest report released Tuesday, the IMF forecast the economic growth of 3.1%. That is down 0.2 percentage points compared to its January projection. So 3.1 down from 3.3 as the original growth. Meanwhile, Korea, they are still at 1.9% for this year and 2.1% for next year, which are the original projections that they had in January. So Korea remains unchanged, but for the world itself, it's down 0.2%.
So the economic forecast has been marked down.
Yeah, if you're marked down, it's been lowered, essentially. Yeah. And you can clearly visualize this because if you have a mark as a measurement, let's say you're measuring your child's height on the wall and this is what you have it measured at, well, imagine just lowering that, bring it down a couple of notches. So you're marking it lower than it was before.
I think of the 30 sale at a supermarket at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah.
Oftentimes you can get items at marked down prices.
Yes.
So they're cheaper than they were earlier in the day because the supermarket obviously wants to sell it. And it's normally things like bread or fresh foods, I guess, that they want to dispose of or, have consumers buy quickly.
Yeah. I remember seeing a lot of different commercials back in the 80s when they're trying to do a hard sell. Yeah. And they'll say, all our prices are marked down. We're slashing prices.
Exactly.
So, we definitely hear that a lot.
가격을 내렸다라는 뜻으로 prices can be marked down. In this case, we're not talking about a price, but it's the forecast. So that can also be marked, which marking is... 표시하다. It can be 채점하다 as well. If you're marking a test, 채점하다. But in this case, it just means the forecast is now lower. It's been marked down. That's the expression.
And the opposite does work if something is marked up.
Yes.
Right. So if if you're selling a product that you want to raise the price on, then you mark up the prices and you keep more for yourself.
Yep. All right. What about impacts brought on by something?
An impact is something that makes a difference, that's noticeable. So it's going to change things or it might wow people. And if it's brought on by something, well, it's the result of something else. There's a cause. And these impacts are the result of something. What is the result of? In this case, we're talking about the conflict in the Middle East.
A로 인해서 초래된 영향, impacts brought on by A 이렇게 표현을 하고요. impacts가 이런 영향, 충격의 의미도 있을 수 있지만 여기서는 그렇게 보면 되겠습니다. 자, 다시 읽어볼게요. The IMF has slightly marked down its 2026 World Economic Growth Outlook to 3.1% after reflecting impacts brought on by the US-Israeli war against Iran. Now let's move on to the next headline.
The world's largest iceberg, A23A, once weighing over 1 trillion tons and more than 6 times the size of Seoul, has finally broken apart in the South Atlantic Ocean after a 40-year lifespan documented by satellites.
한때 무게가 1조 톤 이상의 면적도 서울시의 6배가 넘는 것으로 알려진 세계 최대 빙산 A23A가 위성으로도 관측된 약 40년에 걸친 여정 끝에 남대서양에서 최종 붕괴된 것으로 알려졌습니다. Alright. So this massive iceberg is no more.
Yeah, I guess it's originally formed in Antarctica, as they were saying, the South Atlantic.
Pole. Yep.
So it's started in the south side back in 1986, they're saying. It remained grounded on the seabed for around 34 years after breaking free in 2020. So 6 years ago, it's been drifting.
Yeah.
And after drifting for the last 6 years, now it's actually broken apart.
It's broken apart. 붕괴됐다라고 앞서 해석을 했는데요. Tell us about the expression break apart.
If something breaks apart, then you had something that was maybe just one piece or one whole, but now it's no longer one. It's broken into at least two pieces. It's been separated into two or more pieces.
원래 온전했던 하나의 무언가가 있었는데 이게 조각조각이 나면서 부서졌을 때 it's broken apart. 이렇게 얘기를 할 수 있죠. In this case, of course, we're talking about an iceberg. 그래서 이 빙하가 부서졌다라고 말하면 좀 이상하니까 붕괴됐다라고 하는 게 이 맥락에서는 맞겠죠.
Yeah, exactly. If this is talking about just the physical thing. So you have a big iceberg that used to be one big island, essentially, but now it's been cut into multiple pieces. And that's like I said, that's the physical image that you can imagine.
Yeah.
But if you ever saw the movie Pretty Woman, there's a famous line in that where he talks about what does he do for a living? Well, he buys companies and then he breaks them apart. So this company, maybe they own very expensive land. So then he'll sell that land to another company, and maybe they have patents, and he'll sell those patents to another company. So everything that this company owns, he breaks it apart into multiple pieces for other people to buy.
그렇죠. 그러니까 무언가를 쪼개는 것, 조각조각 내는 것도 breaking apart라고 얘기합니다. 자, 그다음에 documented by satellites.
Documented, meaning that it's been recorded and followed along so that you're keeping track of it. Satellites, of course, are the things in the outer space that look down to help us see things. But, we think of a documentary, which sounds a lot like documented. And in a documentary, you're usually following along with an issue, like a real thing that happened. You're kind of studying it and watching the explanation of what actually happened.
Yeah.
And in the same sort of way, I mean, these satellites are watching this iceberg, which is now broken into multiple pieces. So it's been kind of just watching its life.
Exactly. Anything that's been documented has been written down, it's been observed, there's a document about it, basically, a record about it. 그래서 기록됐다, documented by satellites, 위성에 의해서. 자, 다시 읽어보겠습니다. The world's largest iceberg, A23A, once weighing over 1 trillion tons and more than 6 times the size of Seoul, has finally broken apart in the South Atlantic Ocean after a 40-year lifespan documented by satellites. Here's our final headline.
A 300-million-year-old fossil previously recognized by Guinness World Records as the world's oldest octopus has been reclassified as a different animal, one more closely related to the multi-tentacled shelled modern nautilus.
세계에서 가장 오래된 문어 화석으로 기네스 인증까지 받았던 3억 년 전의 화석이 실은 문어가 아니라 현대 앵무조개류의 친척인 것으로 확인됐습니다. Oh dear. So the oldest octopus is actually not an octopus.
Exactly. And the reason they say that they thought it was an octopus before is because zoologists believe that this is actually decayed before it was fossilized. So if it was just, in its original state and then kind of caught in the mud and then trapped in there and then became, a fossil within that, then it would have been exactly easier to see. But because it had actually decayed a little bit, it had changed, it had died, and then pieces of it had physically changed, and then it got trapped in the mud and fossilized. So they because of that, they weren't able to identify it correctly at the time.
그래요. 이 노틸러스라는 게 우리말로는 이제 앵무조개라고 하는데요. 사실은 이 노틸러스였는데 그동안 옥토퍼스로 오인이 됐던 거죠. 근데 아무래도 굉장히 오래 전의 것이고 그러다 보니까 이런 일이 충분히 발생할 수 있었던 것 같습니다. 이제 재분류가 됐어요. Now it's reclassified.
Yeah, if something is reclassified, then the official we talked about being documented before.
Yeah.
So then the official documentation of something has been changed. It's been reclassified. So before, if you classify something, then you're identifying something as something. But now that you're reclassifying, we're saying that, originally we thought it was this, but now we realize that it's not what we thought, so we're going to change our name for it, or we're going to change our information about this item.
Exactly. So before they thought this fossil was an octopus. They classified it as an octopus. But now they've reclassified it as a nautilus. And a nautilus has a shell, they say, which obviously an octopus does not. What about closely related to something?
If you are closely related to something, then you are similar to something. You share things in terms of identity with something. You could say like, let's say cousins, okay? Typically in English, I guess we do like first cousin, second cousin, third cousin, but you have certain cousins that you are closer to in terms of DNA, that you share more DNA with because maybe it's like your father's brother's children, as opposed to like your great-great-great-grandfather's children's brother, sort of thing. So then you're more closely related to your first cousins than you are your further cousins, if that makes any sense.
Yep. 그래요. 그러니까 closely related to라 그러면은 아주 밀접한 관련이 있다. 굉장히 가까운 그런 이제 친척 관계다라고 선생님은 지금 얘기를 해주셨는데 그런 상황일 수 있고요. 그렇지만 완전히 가까운 완전히 그런 똑같은 건 아닌 거죠. 네. 그래서 closely라는 것은 가깝다라는 의미가 있습니다. 자, 다시 한번 읽어보겠습니다. The 300 million year old fossil previously recognized by Guinness World Records as the world's oldest octopus has been reclassified as a different animal, one more closely related to the multi-tentacled, shelled modern nautilus. All right. Well, that's it for the headlines.